Thank you. Amazing. Thank you. Well, hello, everybody. Thanks so much for coming. It's great to see virtually all the chairs filled. That's amazing. Thank you. I'm Anne Todd. I'm a partner at Michelmores in the commercial team. I specialise in technology and telecommunications and a wide range of other things. And this is the third year that we've hosted this event, and we're really, really delighted to do so. We're seeing an extraordinary rise in and recognition of the power of women entrepreneurs, transforming industries and our economy. And economic success relies heavily on the contributions of women-owned and led businesses. In its latest report on women-powered businesses, Bohurst reports that since 2021, the number of high-growth businesses in the UK has grown from 33,000 to just under 50,000, with the share of businesses founded and led or managed by women rising from just over 18% to almost 30%, which is fantastic. And at Michelmores, we're very proud of all the work that we do to support women entrepreneurs through our My Ventures legal and mentoring support program, which is designed for early stage businesses, and also through our mainstream angel investment network. And we've been delighted to be able to support some fantastic women-led businesses, including Oddbox, Clearer, Loon & Wild, Naked Sprout, Grace and Green, Binnett, Rollmapper, and Scholarkey, just to name a few. So please do come and speak to us if you'd like to know more about the support we offer. But before I hand you over to Audrey and the really great panel, there's a few practical points. We're not expecting any fire drills tonight, so if you hear the alarm, please do follow my colleagues who are wearing green badges to exit the building. And the bathroom facilities are just behind us, down the corridor. And then after the session, please do join us for some more drinks and refreshments upstairs in the bar, and the team will show you the way. So anyway, over to you, Audrey, and the panel. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Anne. And it looks like my microphone is working, which is great. Hi, everybody. I'm Audrey Mandela. I'm the chair of Women in Telecoms and Technology, or WiTT. And there are three other WiTT board directors here with me tonight: Yasmin Majid, Annette Nabavi, and Helen Kaliski. And this is the 14th year that we've had this event. 14th year, yeah, so third year here. And thank you so much, Michelmores. We generally have this event around the same time as Global Entrepreneurship Week because we like to be synced with them, but we don't do it in the week because there are so many activities and so many calls on our entrepreneurs' time. So we're doing it this week, and we do think that this is an even more important time than ever to celebrate female founders. And I won't say what one of the reasons is for my saying that as an American, but yes, I've done it now. So despite some of the positive things that Anne had to say about growth in female-founded businesses, we do still have a bit of a funding gap, a gender funding gap. All male founding teams still outraise female entrepreneurs by a pretty large margin. And tomorrow in the follow-up message, I'll send you links to a few reports from people like Atomico and others who can show you even more stats. And also in last year's State of the European Tech report that Atomico puts out every year, and I think they're doing their next one next week, about half of the women they surveyed said that they think they have a harder time finding funding because they are women. So still some things we need to improve. However, on the plus side, Chancellor Rachel Reeves has announced the Invest in Women Task Force, which is aiming to raise a bigger fund than we've ever seen before for investment in women-led startups. We have even more people committing to the Investing in Women Code, VCs and angel networks alike. Not all of them yet, but we're getting there. And Innovate UK did ultimately award all 50 of the of the funds that they were of the grants that they were supposed to, that they had committed to, for this year's Women in Innovation scheme after they initially only awarded half. And then a few people in this room had something to say about that. And there might even be some people in this room who received some of those grants. So improvement in a number of areas. And of course, we have a phenomenal panel to speak to us tonight. So I'm not going to do any more introductory remarks. We have immediately to my left, Jessi Baker, who's the founder of Provenance and who was named by Founders Forum as one of the 100 women founders to watch. Jaye Cowle, founder of Launch, and despite the name of her company, it is not a space tech business. And Sushma Shankar in the middle, who's co-founder and CEO of Deep Planet, which is a space tech business. And some of you who are WiTT members know that this year has been, our kind of theme has been space tech. So we're glad that Sushma was able to join the panel and add that to this event. So let's get started with the panel. I'd like to ask everybody, first of all, to introduce themselves, tell us a bit about their businesses, and also tell us how they became entrepreneurs. Jessi, would you like to start?
Sure thing. Hi, everyone. Great to be here. I'm Jessi Baker, founder of Provenance. Very inefficient entrepreneurial story. I'll try and tell in a more efficient manner. But essentially started life as an engineer, so I'm technical by background and have trained mostly in software engineering and computer science. But one of my early kind of career moments or jobs was traveling supply chains. I was very fortunate enough to work for a large garment manufacturer. And through that, I got to travel through India and also America and South America, looking at how products are made, the reality, how cotton was grown, how things were stitched together. That then went on to be quite a theme in my career for a while. I followed a fish from Indonesia to Japan, very inefficient fish. It went all over the place. It was stored in Russia in a swimming pool-sized freezer for about 3 months before it was then chopped up and sent to the UK. Essentially, following all of these different products, I saw firsthand the impact that consumer products have on people and the planet. I then pivoted my career into the very end of the supply chain. So I went to work for a big marketing and advertising company on talking about how products are good for you and why you should buy them. And I saw the massive disconnect between those two worlds. How are products created? The value of that journey of people and places and raw materials, and then how are products marketed, which was often a bunch of creatives in a glass box on Madison Avenue, even until recently. And so the idea for Provenance was to really join those two worlds together. I guess it came from a real belief that the future of brands will be transparency and knowing the journey of a product when you buy it. So foolishly went to start a company focused on that. I actually initially started it alongside a PhD, which I really don't recommend because it was like living a double life, sort of academic in the day and then entrepreneur at night. It was quite a mess and quite a stress. But actually it allowed me to do a lot of deep thinking about the problem I was trying to solve and run a lot of experiments without giving away too much equity. So swings and roundabouts, because it allowed us to create a lot of quite interesting technology without very much money as a very scrappy academic. Then got a phone call from basically the family office of the founder of eBay, who just said, "Can I write you a check for your startup?" And I was like, "Why don't we have a startup?" But okay, maybe I do now. Easiest raise ever done. Goodness me, that was the worst lesson ever, because raising money is so hard, and that round was like super easy. So anyway, got that first bit of seed money, started to assemble a team, and then kind of have been through basically a sort of 6-7 year process of realizing that we are way too early to the market with the problem we are solving, but did a very inefficient sort of spiral getting to product market fit. Which brings me to what is Provenance and what are we doing? So the mission for the company has stayed the very same since the sort of initial idea I had for it, over a decade ago, which is one, how can we empower 1 billion citizens to choose products that match their values? So not just buy products based on price, availability, efficacy, but actually buy them based on whether they resonate with their personal beliefs. Be that political, be that about the environment, whatever. So that buying a product can be a reflection of the change you want to see in the world. And the vision for the company was that every great product would come with Provenance, and it would be the de facto method for you to find out information about the social and environmental impact of the product. So from that lofty mission and vision came lots of many scrappy experiments, but we finally got to product market fit a few years ago. And essentially what we do is help brands and retailers to communicate on sustainability. So both in a way that's not greenwash, and it really makes sure that you're communicating robustly, which has become incredibly important with new regulations, but also can help your business grow, green growth essentially, and help capitalize on the fact that many people want to buy products products that match their values. And that means providing technology and all the data that they need in order to do that efficiently in a kind of modern marketing tech stack. And then how does it look at the shopper? So you might not notice provenance when you're shopping around the internet, which is kind of disappointing to my original founder vision. But it's great, we're there. So, might be shopping on Holland & Barrett, look fantastic. If you search for something like vegan or recycled packaging or use the filter or see an edit, that information is all coming from Provenance, helping you make a more sustainable switch. Increasingly, we're seeing retailers doing bolder moves like linking sustainability information into loyalty, which is really great. And it's really actually helping work with brands and retailers to help them switch consumer behavior over to something that's a little bit better than for the planet. Anyway, long way to go, loads of mistakes on the way. Thanks for having me.
Excellent. Thank you, Jessi. Sushma.
Yeah, can beat that, or it's quite similar. It was surprising that a lot of overlaps. But my background is quite similar in the sense I'm a software engineer. Back in the day, this was telecoms engineering, so very related to WiTT, I think. So I started my career really looking at how to address, how to build in technology infrastructure. So this was back in the US, building 4G core infrastructure, so went right from technical specifications to build out a proof of concept of a 4G mobile infrastructure network, deployed it did a proof of concept, went across to commercially deploying it to millions of users across the world. Took a span, it's quite short if I explain it that way, but took me about 6 to 7 years to get there. My family is really from India, have a very much agricultural background, so I have generations of rice farmers really all struggling with conditions and climate. How do we manage water better? How do we get a better yield? At the end of the day, farmers don't have much left. And so I guess this has been ingrained or embedded in me for a long time. So when I was doing this tech career, building out, hugely reliable tech systems globally, I think at some point I realized that, I want to use these skills, the technology skills, or, building something from literally scratch to do something that's good for the planet, or, something entrepreneurial. And I spent some time going back to school, where I came here to the UK to do my MBA at Oxford, and ended up doing a project which was looking at how to address global threat to water. And so this was basically trying to bring innovation and business together. So a lot of thinking went in there about how do we look at what the problems in water on a global scale, and not potentially as a specific point-based solution, but how do we build a business that can scale. I met my co-founders really during the program, and what we were looking at was how, using one of my co-founders has a background in computer vision and AI, and how do we use this technology to look at water conditions on Earth. And just like one of the days we were sitting at a pub and realized that we were three co-founders, but realized that, hey, we want to use something, do something that benefits the planet and the people with the skills we have. This is something we can start looking at, and started building out a proof of concept. It was very much all kind of scrappy, as you were talking about. We were funded by the European Space Agency to build out our initial study. It was going okay, where we did a proof of concept to say, okay, can we look at water conditions in the soil? What can we tell, right? So it was very, very basic. But we got to a point where we were able to publish a paper. And all we had at that time was a website to do some marketing. And so, that was the only marketing. And so when we posted it, after a while, we got a surprise email from one of the largest wine growers in Australia, largest, oldest families there, saying, hey, you guys have done something, done some research, but I have this problem where I have all these sensors on the ground, but somebody convinced me that I have to buy and look out for water conditions and how to better manage water in my vineyards. and I don't know how to use it, and I don't, I can't visualize this data. How do I use it? And maybe we can put two and two together and do something with it. And that's really how we ended up as him as our first customer, and still our customer actually. And so we started digging deeper and deeper into vineyards and realized that, by the way, this is a $420 billion market. It's the second most valuable crop in the world after rice, surprisingly, although it grows only 7.5 million hectares globally. There are hundreds of varieties of wine, right? So it looks simple on top, but then when we started digging into it, we realized, by the way, it's very complex. And so we've spent, long story short, we've spent about 5 years kind of doing heavy research funded by a lot of grants. Some capital we raised from, some investment we raised from angels and angel syndicates. But really at a point where now we have a good product market fit, like you mentioned, building out a full precision viticulture tool. What exactly we're doing is using satellite imagery, data from ground sensors, data from ground data collected over years by farmers, by wine producers, and correlated that. So we built over 30, 40 machine learning models which can correlate the rich ground data set, and we're probably the only ones who commercially are out there using this ground data set, and pioneered several new features which basically, one is understanding the quality of the grape or the sugar, acid, pH levels using satellite imagery. And this basically helps farmers and wine producers understand, looking at logistics, how to improve when and where to harvest, how to look at, what the irrigation conditions are, where to water, is there a disease onset, and how can that be controlled, and what's the health of the soil. And so we ended up with this last piece, which is looking at health of the soil, right? And we look at a few aspects there, looking at the carbon in the soil and looking at nitrogen, the nutrients in the soil. And so we built this into a product, and we have several customers, including some of the largest wine producers globally, smaller farmers. And interestingly, there was a whole bunch of existing customers who came to us saying, hey, we want to use this product, but actually not for our vineyards. We want to use it for other farms. And it should work, right? Should it not work? And so it was an interesting thing that it kept coming back to us that, by the way, actually we've not really built it for wine. We've actually built it it can apply to all kinds of crops. And so now we've expanded onto another product which we call as Soil Signal, basically looking at the health of the soil. And so we work with some large F&B companies, retailers, etc., to look at how they can monitor their supply chain, and probably an overlap here, how they can monitor their farms on the quality of the soil, adopt regenerative practices. It's a good thing to do that brands want to do, but it's also for marketing purposes where they tell good stories to their consumers, and it's becoming more and more important. There's been all these COP going on, sessions going on. It's becoming more and more important where I read a stat the other day that the top 10 food companies apparently have more carbon emissions than the entire aviation industry, which is astounding. And so it's becoming a critical piece for a lot of F&B players or the industry. And so they're investing a lot in regenerative agriculture and monitoring what's happening within the supply chain. And so that's really where we're fitting in. And it was similarly we've had a slow kind of figuring out where the product market fit is, and we have a product market fit for one of the markets, which is the wine industry. And now we are very quickly actually taking it to other markets, which is interesting, how slowly we can evolve and then finally find something, or I hope, I'm sure there is more discoveries to do. But at some point we can start growing more rapidly.
Great. Thank you. And can I just check before we move on to Jaye if the sound for Sushma was okay? Okay, good. Because you sounded
Say
softer.
something again now?
Yeah, I think that's better.
Okay, you sounded softer than I was expecting. So.
I was going to do exactly the same. I was going to check.
Okay. Well, Jaye, thank you.
Those are amazing stories, and really interesting things linking those stories, which is sometimes they're accidental things that happen, sometimes they're life events that happen. You can never predict what an entrepreneur's journey's going to be, and one of the biggest things I think everyone should pay attention to is the life around them and how those things can impact you. Dyson came up with the idea of the centrifugal system was just on a walk and saw this, I think it was a timber yard, and so look up, look at the skies, look at the nature around you, because you never know where ideas will come. For me, Launch was created because I needed flexible working. It was back in the day. Launch is over 12 years old now, and about 14 years ago, I was working in London, had this career, and I got pregnant, and my boss wouldn't let me work part-time. So I decided, I'm not allowed to swear, so I decided, I will move on, and I decided to move to the West Country. In fact, I decided to move all the way to Cornwall, which I would say was a very dramatic way of dealing with my situation. And I almost bought a cheese shop, which had nothing to do, I was working in the travel industry, literally nothing to do with it, but I Googled businesses for sale in Cornwall, and there weren't many. And I thought I could run a cheese shop. Anyway, good news, I had some due diligence done by a great accountant who said, don't buy the cheese shop. I still almost did, actually, but here's a little bit of fate. I got copied into an email from the owner of the cheese shop to his accountant by accident saying, how can we hide all of this money that we're losing? So pay attention, people, pay attention. Sometimes it is luck more than judgment. So I needed flexible working, and I took a job, and I got fired because it didn't align with my values. And that's, it's really interesting you're saying about consumer behavior moving towards being aligned with values. So I thought, well, if I can't work for a company that isn't aligned with my values, why don't I create a company where I can set the values? I had to use my existing skill set, but I then started to innovate that skill set. Launch is an advertising agency. We help people find their customers online. It's mainly through Google and Meta. And what's really weird is the three of us haven't met before. We didn't have a pre-call for this. But what's so interesting is all of our businesses are slightly aligned along things. So we've been going 12 years now. Launch has gone from kitchen table, just me doing it with 2 toddlers. I've got an 18-month age gap. I also don't recommend that. 2 boys, 18-month age gap. Wowzers, that was a baptism of fire. I used to have to hold the door shut while having client calls, and the children would be screaming on the other side. But I created the business with the aim of having a positive impact for the clients that I was working for. I mean, we started small plumbers and roofers and all sorts, and now Iceland Air is one of our clients. Weird Fish, any of you bought their fleeces? Everyone loves a bit of Weird Fish, Jigsaw clothing. But most importantly, as we've evolved, I've created a really meaningful culture. Everything we do at Launch is powered by happiness. And at the moment, it's about creating a high-performing environment for our team to work in, or our high performers to work in, which is about properly creating a workplace that has a culture that empowers people to do their best work. That supports them, nurtures them, challenges them. I don't know if you've read Dan Pink's book, Drive, but it's about motivation and how you can motivate humans to do their best work. And it isn't about just paying them more money. It's about giving them mastery and autonomy and purpose. And I did a talk the other day where I talked about how Launch has kind of gone through the 3 little pigs model, which is, to begin with, we were built from straw. I'd never set up a company before. I had no idea. I just made it up as I went along. And then the wolf came along and almost blew our house down, but it was okay. We managed to then build from sticks. And then the next wolf was called COVID. That was quite an interesting wolf and almost blew the house down. And now we are building from bricks. And why we're building from bricks is because it shouldn't just be about finding customers for our clients. I don't really want to live in a world where we're just
buying more crap we don't need. And technically, brands come to us to help them find more customers that don't necessarily need their stuff. So could we move to a place where we do work worth doing? Anyone read Seth Godin's Song of Significance? You know, it should be about that purpose piece. Why are people buying this? What value are we putting into the world? How can we do work worth doing? I've just come back from a half-term holiday with my kids. Part of that was driving through California. Oh my gosh, when you talk about the soil situation there and the water and the irrigation, it was, you know, my children just couldn't believe these amazing vineyards and olive plantations, and then kind of pretty much desertification, I can't say that word, but you know what I mean, like arid landscapes in between. Las Vegas, where you just switch on the water even though there's no water. You know, we've got to face a reality of the world that we are living in, but also the children that we're bringing into it and the workforce that they will become. So if I can start to marry what we're doing with our wonderful high performers at launch. Yes, this Black Friday will sell more fleeces, great, but longer term, can I take these high performers and work with brands who care about their whole supplier journey? We're a B Corp. It was quite a full-on process to go through through B Corp certification. It helps if you're a female founder, no question. But the scope 3 emissions that we create from the advertising and marketing we do you know that it's 4%? It's the same as the airline industry. Every email you send, all of those photos that you have saved on your phone and the videos you have saved on their phone, they're kept in servers, in data centers. But you're not just one data center. In order to be able to have a backup cloud, they could be in maybe 4 places. So it's so interesting that our businesses, you know, have these little moments. That's the story of launch.
Yes, you also all didn't have some of the standard challenges. So it's easier to become a B Corp if you have female founders. You got your first customer, they just called you. And you got your first funding, they just called you. So that's pretty good. But I suspect that there were some challenges along the way. So Sushma, would you like to start on some of the challenges you faced? Doesn't have to be about being a female founder, but if there are any that you want to throw in, please go ahead.
Yeah, so hopefully you can hear me now. Many challenges, and it's not been very easy, even getting that first customer or the first pilot going and making it successful. And sorry, you can hear me. So I think retrospectively speaking, and I always do this where I'm thinking, what would I have done if knowing what I know now, what would I have done a few years ago? I think obviously finding the product market fit is always a challenge, and how could I have most cost efficiently gotten to that point? Because honestly, we did build, we've spent a lot of money on, which hasn't been wasted, but it has been spent a lot on the technology and building the machine learning models. And there's in terms of grants or capital that we raise, and it has funded this work, right? And I think thinking back, how much of this work would have actually been useful to get to a point where I know what the customer wants. We did spend a lot of time. Well, our first customers were in Australia, and this was one of the challenges, right? And so that's been our first market. And how do we deal with customers in Australia when we are here? And who's going to talk to them, and who's going to sell? And we're talking about farmers, and we didn't realize when we started, you have to be on the ground to shake hands with people. I think it applies to any type of customer where things have changed with COVID, but especially if you're in the agriculture industry, this needs to be done, right? And we somehow, and maybe it was the time of COVID, and we somehow expanded in Australia, not having anybody in there. I have one of my co-founders who lives in the US, and so kind of time zone somewhat works. So we were kind of working around the clock, really, and I don't know if I would recommend that for someone who's starting, saying, why would you spend all your time and effort and energy trying to make this work, right? Like going back, I would probably, and this was something that someone when we started said to us, like, are you crazy? Like, why are you going to different countries? Why don't you just get it right here? But unfortunately, the market that we chose or the market that chose us isn't very big in the UK, but I see, and now we're working with a lot of the biggest producers in the UK, and it's significantly value add just to make that face contact, and I would recommend that to anybody.
Yes, well, winemaking is getting to be a bigger business in the UK as things start to warm up. That's a whole other conversation. So Jaye, aside from the challenge of keeping your children in the other room when you were starting out, what were some of your bigger challenges?
I mean, there's been a big, long list. I try not to look back and regret. I try to learn. I have an immense growth mindset, which sometimes can actually come out that you become slightly indecisive. So I would say I wish I'd surrounded myself with more mentors and maybe coaching earlier. Invest in yourself. I've spent most of my career investing in other people because I need my team to be motivated. I need them to be high performers. But actually, on those bad days where I don't want to get out of bed, I wish that I'd maybe put more things around me and looked after me a little bit better, because you have to be a strong leader. Never underestimate, whether you've got a team of 1 or a team of 50,000, never underestimate how important leadership is, and resilience, and setting a good standard and having a support network around you.
Great. And Jessi, you've raised more than $11 million, is that correct?
12.6.
12.6. That's definitely more than $1 million, more than 11 million. So I suspect that not all of that was as easy as Omidyar calling you up and saying, yeah, we'd like to invest in your not yet really business.
No.
So tell us a bit about the challenges of raising, and then any other challenges you'd like to highlight.
Sure. Challenge of raising, oh goodness me, it's challenging. It really is. So 2 main rounds really, other than that sort of very first easy check. And they've both been very, very challenging. Yeah, I think it's a really awful process. The information asymmetry is so extreme. It's quite insane. I hope it gets radically disrupted by AI or something. But just relentless amounts of conversations that feel so pointless because I think this last round I met 96 different funds, and some of them string you out for 6 pitches or something like that. So it's you do the maths of just how many calls and how you've got to be on your A game every single one of those, because one of them could be the one. But then you just look back and it's, out of that 96, I've got 2 funds to invest, and that is all we needed. But wow, what a waste of time all these other conversations are. It's sort of very demoralizing and very difficult to keep going, yet you need to be so optimistic and peppy to cut through and make it alongside all of those tech bros. It's really relentless. But anyway, I wouldn't say that's my biggest challenge though. I think my biggest business challenge and business sort of mistake was being market timing. I really thought I had a problem to solve, and I did. I wasn't wrong. It's just the market didn't understand enough about that problem. And it really did take about a decade to get to where we are now, where the market does understand the problem. There's a lot of regulation and things around it, and the problem is very formalized. But I did a slog of a decade of market education on not very much money, which has led to some quite great things outside of my company, like several regulations that we were part of shaping. But wow, it was just painful, slow, and I wish at the beginning I'd really sat down and validated the problem recognition way more than I did. And often I meet founders and they've got this idea, and the first thing they're doing is going to raise money to hire a tech co-founder or something. I'm no. You don't need any of that. You don't need any money. You don't need a team. Just go out there and relentlessly talk to the person you think is going to buy your product.
Also known as get out of the building.
Yeah, definitely get out of the building. But it's so true. And I don't know. I wish I'd done that way more. So that's my biggest mistake. But then my biggest personal pain is definitely always been people related. I think COVID was super rough. I was basically a therapist for 30 people on Zoom and didn't create any healthy boundaries. So it was really upsetting at the end of every day being involved in people's dying grandparents or their troubles with their boyfriend, and it's like, wow, like how am I taking this all on? So yeah, definitely sort of people-related stuff for me has been like the lowest lows of the founder journey.
Yeah. No, when we had our business, the people issues were sometimes quite extreme and extraordinarily time-consuming. But in our case, because we were older, we felt more like they were our children.
Yeah,
and,
exactly.
We need to help them. So yes. So that, I guess, that leads nicely into biggest mistakes and biggest good decisions or best decisions. Why don't we carry on with you on that front? So there were a couple of mistakes there, or things you would have done differently.
Yeah, I think sort of biggest challenge and then biggest mistake was like, the market and timing, and I think I'm really considering that as a factor, like very deeply, because it doesn't matter how sort of brilliant your idea is, or not. It's if the market's not ready for it, like you're not going to be able to single-handedly educate them on it enough. So I think that reckoning for me was really important. But I think one thing did well was sort of resilience and kind of grit and like keeping going. And I think there's this weird like sort of alchemy to founding a business of like top-down vision and needing to kind of have that belief, but then also this sort of bottom-up kind of flexibility and willing to listen to the market and your customers and your team and like not hold on. I think what went quite well was not holding on too much to what the product should be, but really being kind of true, always trying to be true to the sort of vision and mission of the company. And the reality is our product's changed a huge amount over the time, which is very painful. Throw away huge amounts of your code base like very regularly. But actually, if you can really not see it as a sunk cost, it's all learning, and all of those little failures actually add up to when you get it right. Some of the most successful products in the world are like just a few lines of code, like Stripe. So it's, if you can keep being like relentless on the mission and the problem you're trying to solve, rather than holding onto the product, I think that is good. That works, and I think we did that kind of reasonably well. Like always trying to stay true to that kind of mission and problem, rather than holding on to the product.
And listening to the customer, it sounds like.
Yeah, listening to customers is really important. But it's very difficult with a mission-driven business, I think, because your customer is not just your customer, it's also like the planet, right? It's like, and it's like dancing that dance between like what's good for the world and citizens versus what's good for business, and trying to marry those two things together, I think, which is why I do think sort of impact founders have got this just really weird sort of set of skills where they're trying to dance these two things, because the planet is not going to pay for your software service, right. But if you don't serve them, then you're not really serving your mission. So trying to link those things together, I think is really complicated. And then just, I guess, linking full circle back to the funding, I think the other thing that's really hard is there's all these sort of impact funds out there. And I really believe 99% of them are absolute bullshit. Like they've just written the word purpose on their homepage. They've got nothing under the hood. Like you go, even like ask them, like, how are you assessing my impact? And it's like mumbo jumbo. It's like you definitely got from ChatGPT. Like you have no idea. Like really no idea. And they're not even set up as impact funds. Like they're not long-term capital. Right. There's no charitable covenant. They're VCs in like impact clothing. So you're sort of trying to navigate this thing over here. You think you've got some allies. Of course, we're impact. Don't worry. We're long-term. We're patient. It's like, no, you're not. Your fund ends in a year. Like, get away. Like, it's a bit of a nightmare, really.
Maybe I can introduce you to Ben from Acumen later.
There are some really good funds as well. There are lots of really good impact funds, but there are some that are not so good. So, you have to find them.
And Jaye, what about you? Best and worst decisions?
I don't know, sometimes I think not having a co-founder, there was a terrible, I don't have a co-founder. That was probably a terrible decision, but then I'm the master of my own destiny. So I don't know, there's always a pro to everything. Knowing that that's the case, actually, that there's always a trade-off from everything. Somebody once said to me that there's no actual such thing as balance, there's only counterbalance. There's the action that to keep you, a ballerina would tell you that, to keep you balanced. So I hearing what you're saying there about, funding, I also sit here as a bit of an audience member that I have the potential to go out for funding to then do some M&A to acquire some businesses so that we can affect the proper customer journey, not just the acquisition side. And I am so fearful of that, of the rounds of funding, of how women are viewed, female founders. Apparently, on average, they take longer to receive the investment, even once they get the investment, and it's only 2% of the amounts of the investments that are made in female founders. There's so many stats that I think we have to be careful that we don't disempower female founders to actually even seek that help.
I was successful. So,
yes, exactly. And it's also, there's a lot of responsibility on our shoulders to be impact founders, to be mission driven, because it's seen as a kind of more female trait. And so I walk into our future at launch and I think, do I sell out and I don't know, some PE company owns us and maybe the culture disappears and I sail off into the sunset? Or do I actually try and make this much bigger? And I'm quite fearful of that decision at the moment.
Interesting.
Sushma?
Yeah, so maybe, I mean, it's a very, very similar experiences, but maybe to add a different touch. I think going back, I would just thinking about some of probably the mistakes, or not mistake, but decision that I could have done better was maybe when we started the company, and maybe related to some of the people here or entrepreneurs here. I guess going in full time, or kind of with both feet in rather than 1 feet in, and given that we were 3 founders, we've had we had industry experience, we had good jobs. Now, how do you give up something that you have to go do something that you don't know, have no idea about this industry potentially? And so we did gradually kind of one at a time, or 1.5 at a time, we kind of came into the business coming more full-time, but we also spent a lot of time doing that, which I think going back, if we had more focused and went and raised some money, or someone wrote us a check, or I had a small check, we potentially could have gone in more full-time and could have gotten more traction earlier. But you never know, right? Like the timing of the market is also a question, mainly for where we were 5 years ago, and now we have so many competitors as well. So it's about, at that time, would somebody buy? Would customers buy? Or are customers now more knowledgeable, that they know about us, that they know about the tech and they want to buy? So it's about the timing as well. So there's always a pro and con. Some of the good things that we did, or good decisions we did, related to people, right? So we've hired, we're not huge, we're about 13 people right now. So at one point we did hire a sales team, a few more technically, majority of us are, about 6 people are in tech and R&D, and the rest doing product, customer success, sales, etc. So I think some of the best decisions have been about hiring the right people. A lot of the people who are with us have been with us since we started, quite a few of them, and some have joined and stayed on through the life of the company. But there were also some bad decisions where we made, particularly during COVID, where we didn't really meet the people, hire them. It's a new niche market. We don't know, and we're talking about more on the customer side and more on the product side. Do they understand the customer, and do they understand the technology? And I think a lot of the tech businesses face this challenge, especially if you're going into industries where are enabling it with more tech, because I think some of the people didn't really understand the AI side of what we were doing. What are the possibilities? What cannot be done? What are the accuracies? And how do you communicate that with the customer, right? And so eventually we kind of let them go, but we've learned our lessons in terms of, are we going to look for somebody who knows the customer well, or are we going, like, it's a mix of both, right? And or is it like finding somebody and training them up? And that's the best thing that we've found has worked for us. So that's a couple of things. I can keep talking.
Well, I'd like to give the audience a chance to ask some questions of the panel. So, and I see that Helen has a question. We have microphones at the back, so do we have a microphone at the front as well? No. Oh, it's here. Helen, grab the microphone. No.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
You can hear me
Yes.
now. I have a question for Jaye. So, Jaye, I'm very interested that you embarked in the world of startups because you weren't given a part-time job. Did you ever work part-time as a result of leaving your job where you couldn't work part-time?
No, and it wasn't. It was flexible working. So yeah, and I slightly pivoted so that I didn't have to do like a 9-to-5 job. I found a part of marketing that I could do at 3 a.m. or I could do at 1 a.m. You know, like, you know, and I could also be really, really efficient with the time I had to make the most amount of impact. So I needed flexible working because basically the job I had, by the time I paid for childcare, I wasn't earning any money, and it's not better now than it was then. It's different now. There is a bit more support, but it is quite interesting, and that's why I'm trying to, you know, my aim in life is if I can try and get more companies to realise that you need to design a company around the human beings that work for it, rather than what business says is meant to happen and has been happening since the Industrial Revolution.
Thank you.
Which I think female-founded startups tend to do. Maybe not all the time, but I think they get it anyway. I wouldn't say all startups are like that. Do we have other questions from the audience? Annette?
Sorry about that. No, it's my turn. I wanted to ask about scaling up, because I think, you know, it's great having a small business with, I don't know, 15, 20 people, etc. But at the end of the day, if you're going to make a big impact, you need to scale your businesses. And I'd be interested to hear your views on how you can scale up and whether indeed you want to, because I think you do need to want to if you're going to do it.
Well, Jessi, would you like to start?
Yeah, sure
You
thing.
definitely want to scale up.
Yeah, definitely want to scale up and have reached a quite exciting moment, I think, with Provenance. So I actually stepped down as CEO 2 months ago, and it was for that very reason, because I think we've hit scale mode. And they don't need a crazy entrepreneur with loads of new ideas as the boss. They need
No founder mode?
I know. I know. That article came out right as I stepped down. And I was like, ooh,
Yeah,
Paul Graham might not agree with this. But anyway, whatevs. And I think founder mode has a place. But I actually think with a business like ours, no, it's really doubling down on what's working and just scale this. Like it is working. We've got product market fit. You know, we've got 350 paying enterprise customers. Like that is proof this market works. So I sort of needed to get out of the way really and just let that happen. Put a seasoned commercial leader who's led much larger teams than I have in the position, and that's been working really brilliantly. So yeah, but we had to kind of have a bit of a heart to heart about the kind of growth we wanted. And I think it's not unbridled growth at all costs. I think profitability has become, way more important. We have been profitable at times, but it wasn't always something we were striving for. And I think in the market today, that's more important than ever. And just allows you to choose your own destiny. Like profitable companies can choose what they want to do. So it's no bad thing. So yeah, I think not scale at all costs, but very much we are in scale mode, and kind of recognise that's the beauty of software as well, is that you can serve infinity customers. It's been quite a difficult mode for me, because I think trying to reckon with what your value is when you sort of need to just step away and let others scale can be quite tricky. Yeah, I'm just chilling. No, really not. But yeah, I had to sit myself down and work out what my role is, and kind of now I'm basically sort of mascot. Like I do, I do all the thought leadership and a lot of front of funnel work, and I think that's good. It's a good place for me, and the team be the operational engine and grow, and things are going well.
Right, Sushma, anything to add to that?
In terms of scale, I guess the business that the planet, basically there is impact, and only when we scale, right? And the mission of the company is to harness AI for the benefit of the planet. And really the goal of how we started the company and where we're going with it is we found a product or we found an industry, it works, but it is huge. It's not huge enough to make an impact. And so how do we, and so we've I think where we've taken as more of a founder mode is taking the journey of where can we find a product that can scale globally, get to profitability, do all those things, but also how do we, scale the product itself, the technology itself to model the Earth globally, and that comes with challenges with people. We're not there yet in terms of scaling massively. We're looking for another funding round to get to that point. But yeah, our next stop potentially Series A. But yeah, that's where we are.
Well, there's some people from Angel Academy sitting in the back of the room who might want to talk to you about that. And Jaye?
And it's different for me as well, because I'm a privately owned business, so I don't have like a board of, I don't have funders. So actually, I'm kind of, I suppose, I'm a master of my own destiny, but it's at what point is it a lifestyle business, and what point you can't stop growing. That's the thing. There's no such thing as standing still, especially, well, I think for all businesses, but in our market, if you're not continually growing, you're going backwards, and nobody wants to work for a company going backwards. So I'm actually looking at having then a share scheme that more of the team can be part of, maybe even in the future becoming an EOT. But I've just paid for a promotion. I've promoted myself to CEO. I've now got a managing director. I'm now thinking, how long can it be until I then become what you're doing? Because it's the thought leadership that I find interesting. The running of the company. I've done it long enough now. So we'll see what that journey takes. But ultimately, I know that I can, even if we get to 60 people and, 6 million, 7 million revenue, there's only so much impact we can have. So taking that vision of empowering happy companies to create more happy customers, I'm interested to know how we can take that much bigger, and what you're doing, has that impact, and if we can work with more companies that use what you do to actually put more value into the world. It's a never-ending game, because you've also got to, pay for the mortgage and
yeah. Well, yes. And a question over here. There's a microphone right there.
Great. Hi, I'm Diana. What experience do you have with saying no to money that did not align with your values in one way or another?
Some?
Yes. Who has the luxury?
You're so right on. It's such a difficult dance, that one. I created this ridiculous charter for the business when I first started it, which is like a whole rabbit warren that won't go on now. We were like a very early B Corp, and part of B Corps was changing your articles, and I was like, well, why don't you go bigger, and I'll set what the shareholding could be, and I wanted it to be majority female investors and all of this stuff. So I had quite strict criteria on our funding round, which turned out to be very bad when you're just trying to raise. Because then it's like, oh my goodness, look at your articles. There was a bit of undoing that had to be done. Not to the sort of mission, but just the lawyers didn't really like my creativity. But we did step away from a few offers of funding along the way. But mostly just because we were just mission through and through, really have not started the company with sort of money exit in mind, although really hindsight I kind of wish I had, but very much mission served the mission, and so we had to make sure every investor we had was bought into the mission, and so there have been some funds that offered us cash that we decided to say no, but it was a no-brainer no, because it was it wasn't this, but it was basically oil money, it's you just can't you can't be a sustainability company and have an oil company on your cap table. It's just especially if you're in transparency, good luck with that. Had that experience, but I don't know, the funding landscape right now, it's tricky. So that would be a high class problem to say no, I think.
we turn down clients, and we fire clients, and so that's saying no to revenue. The no's are far more important than the yeses, I think.
Yeah.
Because that now enables you to use it within your culture to talk about why you're saying no. And sometimes it can be a good conversation with the company that you're saying no to, but definitely the no's tell a stronger story than the yeses do.
Really hard with customers, I think. We had the same. I was such a yes person. Our customer base was just a mess. But actually, particularly with software products, you have to be so laser focused because you really want to find that repeatability that you can scale with a tiny team. So there are a lot of no's along the way eventually when you pluck up the courage.
I think for us, it's mostly been gut. Honestly, for any entrepreneur, I would say use your gut to make those decisions. And finding, for example, the right investor. We had an offer, and we were like, okay, does this work? Had a shady background, and industry that we didn't want an investor to be from. All these things, right? And then I am probably a yes person, but I think eventually the way the things go is kind of realize in your gut that this is probably not a good fit, and then it goes downhill, right? And it's the same thing for customers. Like there were tobacco companies wanting us to look at, there's all kinds of customers now who want to see what their portfolios look like and how they're doing, etc. So it's always a challenge where you got to say no to a customer. But quite often I've seen that if it's not a right fit, either you say yes or no. It's never going to go too far anyway.
Right. Well, I'm going to say let's put a hold on the questions now because we are getting close to time. And I do have one final question for the panel, and that is, what advice do you have for other women entrepreneurs? Let's just run down the line. Jessi, would you like to start?
Yes. I think if you're just about to start a company or you're just at very early stages, I think there's really there's such an important moment, which is before you have any employees and before you have any investors, where it's just you and your co-founders, and you can really look at your plan and like really work out what you want to do, both like how you want it to impact your life, what kind of business you want to create, what the principles are. And so I really think guardianing that moment and doing the work to really make sure you can almost make like a promise with yourself of like what you want to do and what your boundaries are. Because the moment you've got people working for you and the moment you've got investors that have given you cash, like you're working for them. Like you like straight away, like you really are, if you've got any like degree of empathy. So yeah, I think just getting that foundational layer really, really right and trying to really understand the principles and kind of boundaries you want to put around this thing, because it is such a marathon. It's not like, I just think those stories of like, I just created something, I sold it for $1 million next year, like in a year. It's like, it's just not the reality. It's mostly a marathon. So yeah, and you're running that marathon. It's your doing. So I think, yeah, taking that early moment to really decide the kind of marathon you want to run personally, I think is really important.
Great. Yes, I agree completely. Sushma.
I think a few things, right? Resilience and grit, and we spoke about that. And it applies to any entrepreneur, and probably more so for female entrepreneurs, given it's twice as hard for women like to raise money, to do, to build a team, to start anything, right? Honestly, I feel like we need to put in twice the effort compared to a man in the same situation. And so you have to be hardworking, you have to be, and there is no other way, at least at this time in life, right? And have the grit and resilience not to give up. But there are those baby steps, right? Just keep going until, and you look back 5 years, 6 years from where you were, and you realize that, oh, by the way, it's a huge leap from where you started. And I always believe that the harder things are, you're probably learning the most. So when it's easy, I kind of like, I'm bored, right? And that has the most impact on your career.
Although sometimes a little boredom would be nice, right? Jaye, what about you?
Totally agree with both of those. And the final one is buy a pair of positive pants. You need to be armed with some positive pants on. You surround yourself with cheerleaders. They don't have to be in your industry. They don't even have to be, they can be family, they can be friends, but have lots of cheerleaders. One of the key ways of being happy as a human is to be involved in community, and that can be a community of people who are supporting you with your business, who give you the high fives when you need them, show gratitude to them, show gratitude to everybody on that way up that ladder, but definitely wear your positive pants because you will need them, because things are hard. And if they were easy, they wouldn't, I don't know, they wouldn't have meaning.
Very true, and a good note to end on. So before I do a little bit of housekeeping, I would just like to ask you all to join me in thanking our panel.